My great-grandfather used to say there was no such thing as being politically incorrect in the Wild West. People simply did what they could get away with. A woman could be trapped in a brothel and still be blamed for being there. A black man could be treated as guilty before anyone asked for proof. A sheriff could take money from the same men he was supposed to arrest. Children worked like small adults. Prisoners were beaten before trial, and crowds watched punishments like entertainment. Nobody called it a scandal, they called it order. These 20 facts show the parts of the Wild West that would get buried, banned, or canceled today. If you want the Old West without the clean movie version, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what state you're watching from. Number 1, public humiliation was part of the punishment. In many Western towns, punishment did not have to stay behind a jail door. A man could be tied to a post, dragged through the street, locked in stocks, whipped, tarred, or displayed where everyone could see him. The point was not only pain, the point was to make him small in public. People could laugh, spit, point, and bring their children close enough to watch. Today, that kind of scene would look like abuse filmed for evidence. Back then, it could be treated as a lesson. A town did not always need a courtroom to make a person suffer. Sometimes it only needed a crowd and a place to tie him. Number 2, poor people were treated like trouble, not victims. A hungry drifter walking into town was not always seen as a man who needed help. He could be seen as a threat before he stole anything. No job, no money, no clean clothes, no local family. That was enough to make people suspicious. A man asking for food might be pushed out of a saloon, run off by a store owner, locked up for vagrancy, or forced into filthy work just to be allowed to stay. Poverty was not romantic on the frontier. It smelled bad, looked bad, and made respectable people nervous. The poor were often not treated like society had failed them. They were treated like they were the problem society had to remove. Number 3, children worked like small adults. A 12-year-old boy in a Western town was not protected the way modern people imagine childhood should be protected. He might carry water, clean stables, run messages, sweep saloons, help with animals, work around mines, or scrub floors after grown men spent the night drinking and fighting. A child could be cleaning manure in the morning and wiping spilled liquor before sunset. If there was blood on the floor after a fight, somebody had to clean it. If a horse kicked, somebody had to get close enough to feed it anyway. The frontier did not pause because a worker was small. A child who could carry, sweep, shovel, or obey was useful. That was often enough. Number 4, prisoners could be punished before trial. Arrest did not always mean safe custody. It could mean chains, a filthy lockup, a beating from a deputy, or a night beside men who were drunk, violent, sick, or already convicted in the eyes of the town. A prisoner might not have heard a sentence yet, but his body could already be paying. He could be shoved into a room with no clean bedding, no privacy, no real separation between first offenders and dangerous men. If he complained, he might get hit. If he resisted, he might get hit harder. Modern people like to draw a line between accusation and punishment. In many frontier places, that line was thin. Sometimes the arrest itself was the beginning of punishment. Number 5, crowds could decide guilt before the court did. Rumor moved fast in small towns. A stolen horse, a dead man, a frightened woman, a missing child, a wrong look, a bad reputation. Any of it could turn into accusation before facts caught up. Once the crowd had a name, the court could become a detail instead of the main event. What did he do? Doesn't matter, they say he did it. That was the dangerous part. The phrase "they say" could carry more weight than evidence if the town was angry enough. A man could be dragged from a cell, beaten, threatened, or hanged before anyone seriously asked what could be proven. Vigilantes liked to call it justice because that sounded cleaner than revenge. But for the person accused, the difference did not matter much. By the time truth arrived, the punishment might already be finished. Number 6, a woman's reputation could be used against her faster than any weapon. In a frontier town, protection often depended on what people thought a woman was. A married woman from a known family might be pitied if something happened to her. A poor woman alone might be questioned first. A saloon worker might be blamed before she was heard. A prostitute might not be believed at all. Reputation worked like evidence before evidence arrived. If a man hurt her, people could ask where she was, what she wore, why she went there, whether she drank, whether she had done it before. The cruelty was not only in the act itself, it was in the way the town could turn around and put the dirt back on her. A woman could be harmed once by a man, and then harmed again by everybody explaining why she should have expected it. Number 7, brothels sold survival as glamour. The movie version gives you red curtains, piano music, laughing women on balconies, and men throwing coins like the whole thing is part of the scenery. The real economy was uglier. Many women ended up there because the frontier did not offer many clean exits. Widows without support, immigrants with no family, runaway girls, women abandoned by men who moved on, poor women who found out that washing clothes, cooking, or sewing did not always pay enough to keep hunger away. A brothel could look like choice from the outside and still be a trap once debt, disease, alcohol, violence, and the owner's cut closed around it. The town used these women and judged them at the same time. Men paid for them, drank with them, fought over them, and then called them ruined. A saloon owner could profit from every laugh, every drink, every upstairs room, and still speak about morality when it suited him. That is the part that would never survive a clean public image today. The same society that gave desperate women few respectable ways to survive punished them for taking one of the only ways left. It was not romance. It was an industry built from loneliness, male appetite, poverty, and blame. Number 8, sexual violence could disappear under status. If the man accused had money, a badge, a business, friends, or the right skin color, the story could bend around him. If the woman was poor, native, black, Mexican, Chinese, working in a saloon, or known as a prostitute, her word could be treated like something already damaged. The question was not only what happened, it was who would be believed. That is the part people like to soften when they talk about frontier roughness. Roughness is too small a word. A woman could be assaulted and then face a town more interested in protecting a man's name than her body. A sheriff might not want trouble with a powerful customer. A judge might see her as unreliable before she opened her mouth. Witnesses might suddenly remember less if the accused man bought drinks, paid wages, owned property, or had friends with guns. The crime could become gossip, then a joke, then nothing. Not because nobody knew, because too many people benefited from not knowing too much. Number 9, dance hall girls were part of a money machine. A dance might look harmless from across the room. Music, skirts, boots on the floor, a tired man smiling for the first time in weeks. But the business was built to keep money moving. A man paid for the dance. Then she brought him to the bar. Then he bought a drink. Maybe the drink was weak, overpriced, or poured from the cheapest bottle in the place. The owner took his cut. The woman got hers if the system was feeling generous. The man thought he had bought attention. What he really bought was a few minutes inside a machine designed to empty his pocket without making him angry too soon. The girl's smile was work. Her laugh was work. Even her kindness could be part of the bill. Number 10, pregnancy could ruin or kill a woman faster than a bullet. On the frontier, an unmarried pregnant woman could lose work, housing, reputation, and any chance of being treated as respectable. If the man disappeared, denied it, or moved on to another town, she carried the consequence alone. People might whisper about sin while offering no food, no doctor, and no protection. A pregnancy inside a brothel could be even worse. It could mean lost income, punishment from the owner, dangerous attempts to end it, or being pushed out when she became inconvenient. And childbirth itself was dangerous. No modern hospital, no antibiotics, no safe emergency surgery. A fever after delivery could turn deadly. Bleeding could become fatal before help arrived. A dirty room, dirty hands, or one infected tear could decide whether she lived. That is what made this reality so brutal. A man could walk away from the same act with his reputation intact. A woman could be left with shame, poverty, pain, and a medical risk her body might not survive. In the Wild West, pregnancy was not only personal, it could become a sentence. Number 11, some people walked into a room already losing. A black man accused of something in a frontier town did not always enter the situation as a citizen waiting for proof. He could enter it as a problem the crowd thought it already understood. A sheriff grabs his arm. Men gather near the boardwalk. Someone shouts that he did it. Someone else repeats it louder. By the time anyone asks what was actually seen, the room has already chosen a direction. That was the danger. Racism did not need a full trial to start working. It could work through silence, through who was believed first, through who was allowed to speak without being laughed at, through through who could be dragged through the street while everybody called it order. If a white witness pointed, that could carry more weight than a black man's denial. If the crowd was angry enough, the lawman might be less interested in truth than in keeping the crowd from turning on him too. This is the part the clean Western myth avoids. The gun was not the only weapon in town. Suspicion could be one too. Number 12, Native people were treated as obstacles to land. The Western myth loves the word settlement because it sounds peaceful. Families moving west, farms being built, towns appearing from dust. But a lot of that land already had people on it. Native communities were not background scenery. They had homes, hunting grounds, burial places, treaties, memories, and names for the places settlers casually renamed. The ugly part is how easily that got flattened into inconvenience. A settler could talk about empty land while standing on ground someone else had lived on for generations. A newspaper could describe Native resistance as savagery while ignoring the broken promises that came before it. Soldiers, traders, politicians, railroad men, and local officials could all speak the language of progress while the result was removal, hunger, violence, and children growing up in a world where their people were being pushed out of the story in real time. Today, that kind of language would be attacked immediately. Back then, it could sound respectable if the right men said it from the right office. Number 13. Chinese immigrants were used, hated, and pushed out. This is one of the dirtiest bargains in the Western story. Chinese workers helped build the railroads, ran laundries, cooked, mined, cleaned, carried, repaired, and did work. Other men wanted done, but did not want to respect. Their labor was useful. Their presence was treated as a threat. That contradiction is the whole point. A town could depend on Chinese labor and still spit on Chinese people in the street. A laundry could be necessary and despised at the same time. White workers could take out their anger on men who had less power than the bosses actually controlling wages. Politicians could turn that resentment into law. Mobs could turn it into broken windows, beatings, expulsions, and dead bodies. The cruelty did not always announce itself as cruelty. Sometimes it came dressed as protecting jobs or keeping order or preserving the town. But the pattern was clear enough. Use the worker, blame the worker, push the worker out when he becomes visible. The Wild West did not just erase Chinese immigrants from the heroic cowboy image later. In many places, it tried to make daily life hostile while they were still there. Number 14. Mexican vaqueros helped build the cowboy world and then got erased from the myth. A lot of what people think of as classic cowboy culture did not begin with the white movie cowboy. Roping, riding methods, cattle handling, gear, language, and working habits were shaped heavily by Mexican vaqueros long before Hollywood turned the cowboy into a clean American symbol. That makes the erasure especially ugly. The skills were useful, so they were absorbed. The people were easier to push aside. Spanish words stayed in the culture. Techniques stayed. Saddles, ropes, and riding knowledge stayed. But the popular image slowly got whitened until many viewers forgot who taught whom. That is not the same kind of violence as a bullet, but it is still a kind of theft. A people can help build a world and then watch someone else become the face of it. Number 15. Poverty made people disposable. Race and gender mattered, but money decided a lot too. A poor miner crushed underground, a ranch hand kicked by a horse, a prostitute beaten by a customer, an immigrant laborer killed on a job, a drifter found dead outside town. Many of them could disappear from public concern almost immediately. If they had no family nearby, no property, no powerful employer, and no name worth printing, the town moved on fast. He got killed, then hire another. That was the cold logic underneath a lot of frontier life. A body could be replaced if the work still needed doing. A dead poor man did not always become a tragedy. Sometimes he became an opening. Another man could take the shovel, the rope, the horse, the room, the corner, the bunk. Poverty did not just make life harder, it made death quieter. In the Wild West, some people were remembered by name, and some were erased almost as soon as the dirt closed over them. Number 16, the badge did not always mean protection. Sometimes it meant access. A sheriff in a western town could be the man who kept order, or the man who knew exactly which disorder was profitable. Saloon owners, gambling houses, cattlemen, railroad interests, and local businessmen all had reasons to stay friendly with the law. That did not always mean a bag of money under a table. Sometimes it meant free drinks, campaign support, quiet favors, unpaid debts, or simply knowing which side of town mattered. That is where corruption became hard to separate from normal government. One saloon gets raided for gambling. Another saloon keeps running the same game because the owner knows the right men. One drunk gets dragged to jail. Another gets walked home because his employer is important. The badge still looks official from the street. Up close, it can start looking like a key that opens doors for the people who already have power. Number 17. Fanes turned vice into city income. Many frontier towns did not really want gambling, prostitution, drinking, and disorder to disappear completely. They wanted them controlled, taxed, fined, and useful. A brothel could be condemned in public and still help keep money moving. A gambling hall could be raided just often enough for the town to look respectable. A prostitute could be fined, released, and then fined again later. Morality became a kind of cash register. That is the part that would sound especially ugly today. The town could pretend to punish vice while depending on vice to pay. A woman working in a saloon, a gambler running a table, a drunk sleeping it off in a cell, all of them could become part of the local economy. The law did not have to approve of them. It only had to collect from them. That made cleaning up the town less clean than it sounded. Number 18, jail could punish before conviction. A man did not have to be found guilty to spend the night in a filthy room with lice, a waste bucket, drunk prisoners, and men who had already decided he was weak. A first offender could be locked beside someone violent. A witness could be held like a criminal. A poor man who could not pay a fine might sit longer than someone with friends or cash. This was not always a formal sentence. It did not need to be. The body knew the difference. Chains, bad air, rough handling, no clean bedding, no privacy, no real protection from the other men in the room. That was punishment before the judge ever finished talking. The law could say custody. The prisoner would feel something else. Number 19, vigilantes could become the law overnight. When a town was angry enough, a crowd could start calling itself justice. Men gather after dark. Someone brings rope. Someone knows where the prisoner is being held. The sheriff hears the boots outside and has to decide how hard he really wants to fight his neighbors. Sometimes the law stopped the crowd. Sometimes it failed. Sometimes it stepped aside. That is the part Western myth likes to blur. Vigilante violence was often described as necessary when courts were slow, weak, or inconvenient. But necessary can become a very useful word when nobody wants a trial. A man accused of horse theft, murder, assault, or sometimes simply being the wrong person in the wrong town could be taken before evidence had a chance to breathe. By morning, the story could already be cleaned up. The town had acted. The danger had been removed. Order had been restored. Those words sound stable until you picture the body at the end of the rope and the men walking home like they had done a civic duty. Number 20, the final forbidden truth is that the Wild West was not simply lawless. That version is too easy. The darker truth is that it often had order, but not equal order. Property could be protected better than people. Business could be protected better than women. White testimony could matter more than black denial. A man with money could survive accusations that buried a poor man. A sheriff could enforce morality in one place and drink on credit in another. That kind of order is harder to face than chaos. Chaos sounds accidental. This was not always accidental. A town could know exactly who was allowed to be rough, who was expected to stay quiet, who could be pushed out, who could be fined again, who could be believed, and who could be ignored. The system did not need to protect everyone to call itself civilization. It only needed to protect the people it considered worth protecting. That is why these facts would get buried or canceled today. Not because every person in the Wild West was evil, because too much of the world they lived in treated cruelty as routine when it happened to the right victim. The poor, the accused, the prostitute, the immigrant, the native family in the way of land, the black man in front of an angry crowd, the prisoner before trial, the child old enough to work, but not old enough to understand why no one cared. The clean myth says the Wild West was rough but free. The dirtier truth is that freedom depended heavily on who you were when you walked into town. Some people got law, some people got force, some people got protection, some people got used, blamed, fined, beaten, erased, or buried without much trouble to anyone important. So, which of these would get buried fastest today? The bought sheriffs, the brothel economy, the child labor, or the public punishments? Put it in the comments and tell me what state you're watching from. If you want the Old West without the clean movie version, subscribe and like the video.